welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Welcome to Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast. This is Jessica. I am your host, and I am here with the author of a book called Raiders of the Lost Heart, which is a fabulous pun, by the way.
Thank you.
And it has a beautiful, beautiful cover, and it is adorable in every way and super, super fun. Romance, rivals to lovers, adventure with some spice, and it's got like a hint of archaeology in it, a little bit more than that. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about this book and where it all came from for you?
So I'm Jo Segura. My book, Raiders of the Lost Heart, is coming out on December 5th. It's an enemies to lovers, archaeologists in the Mexican jungle searching for Aztec artifacts. I came up with the idea because I just love adventure movies and I love Indiana Jones. I mean, I just grew up watching Indiana Jones, and those were like my favorite movies. And one day I just had this idea, like, what if Lara Croft and Indiana Jones went on an adventure together? And I was like, I got to write that now. So, it really was just this kind of on a whim. One year during NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, I thought, I'm going to give this one a go. And it came together like right away. It was like this book was waiting for me to write it.
First of all, thank you for mentioning NaNoWriMo. I am a huge fan, and we do NaNoWriMo programming at the library all the time, virtual programming especially, because we get people from all over. So wait a second. So were you able to actually finish the entire book in a month? That's one thing I have to ask now.
I did not finish the entire book because, as you know, with NaNoWriMo, the goal is to write 50,000 words in the month. And for most full-length novels, 50,000 words is not long enough. I did manage to write more than 50,000. I probably got around 65,000. I was just really jamming on this book, and it was just coming out of me like it was ready to be written. But I didn't finish the whole thing. I then spent the next month or 2 months doing some, finishing it up. Usually I've done NaNoWriMo several times, and I usually take December off because once you finish that, full month of writing, it's a lot, and your brain needs some time to decompress. So I usually take December off, and then I start again in January. But I did write the bulk of Raiders during NaNoWriMo.
So I want to talk a little bit about Corrie and her journey as an archaeologist versus Ford, which, I mean, that's a play on Harrison Ford, right?
Yes, of course.
Good.
Yes.
Okay.
I love him. I just huge crush.
I mean, come on, who doesn't? But yeah, talk a little bit about just the differences between them, because Corrie is going into it sort of researching her heritage versus Ford, who's coming at it from a completely different situation of privilege. And while he has his own stuff going on, and it does touch upon some stuff that Corrie sort of remembers, it sort of sets the rivals part a bit, and I thought it was just sort of a very interesting place for the two of them to start versus the adventure that they end up going on.
Yeah, so that's my dog Henrik. So the Corrie character, I really wanted to write an archaeology-based romance where at least one of the characters had a connection to whatever it was that they were searching for. Because when you think about movies like Indiana Jones and Lara Croft and National Treasure. Well, maybe National Treasure is not the best example, but usually in those, The Mummy, in those movies, the characters don't have a personal connection to what it is that they're searching for. And I thought that was really important for Corrie's character, that she actually is looking for something that means something to her. And that's why it meant so much to her to be on this expedition versus Ford, who likes archaeology. And, it's not that he's not interested in this particular quest, but it doesn't mean as much to him. And so, you really see the growth of their characters, just kind of understanding why it is that they're out there. That's like a really big thing for Corrie, where, she explains to Ford, why is it that we do what we do? And it's not just for fortune and glory, which is an Indiana Jones Easter egg, but it's not just for that. It's to really discover, who were these people who came before us? Why did they do the things that they did? What can we learn from those people? And so her perspective is a little bit different than Ford's in that way.
Yeah, for sure. And I did appreciate sort of they're coming together from the two different angles. One thing I did find that was interesting, I mean, this was a fun book and there were a lot of fun puns and innuendos and just it just like I could kind of tell that you were smiling a lot while writing this one. But you did have some heartfelt stuff like uh, both Ford's struggle with cancer and somebody who Corrie had lost. Was that sort of something you thought of immediately within the story, that was sort of something that was going to shape the two different characters, or did that kind of come later?
So one of the things that I always feel with enemies to lovers, which is personally my favorite romance trope. I just love it because I feel like it has a lot of really great banter. But, one of the things about enemies to lovers is there has to be a real reason as to why they hate each other so much. And it can't just be, a simple, you ate my sandwich that I had marked in the refrigerator at work the other day. Though we've all been there. I had a coworker steal my juice once, and I was very upset about that.
I mean, honestly, if it was a really good sandwich, I might hate on that person for a while.
You might, like if you were like really waiting for that sandwich and they ate it. But in an enemies to lovers trope, often the characters just hate each other and you don't really see the reason. So I wanted to make sure that you saw the reason, but also they need to have something where they can connect on a more emotional level so that it gives them a reason to want to be together. It can't just be they're mean and nasty all the time and then eventually they're like, oh, well, I think you're hot, so let's get together. There has to be something on a deeper level. And so I really wanted something where the two of them could connect, where they see that they're really not that different and they've had a lot of the same experiences, even though Ford's are very different than Corrie's. He's a man in this world where he gets things just because he's this attractive guy, and Corrie's over there having to work her butt off to get the exact same things and not being taken seriously because she's also, this Lara Croft type adventurer where she's off doing crazy things all over the world. But they needed to have something where they could see that really they're not that different. And then also, so because of what the two of them were going through with their parents, Corrie could help Ford through that helps to build that deeper connection.
Yeah, I think it really sort of added some substance to just their characters and their story. And like you said, like their romance, it made it, like I like how you said that. It kind of it gives them reason to sort of want to kind of come together.
Mhm.
Yeah, I I appreciated that there was, I mean, obviously there was a lot of fun and there was some spice in the story, but I do appreciate that there was just that emotional component to it.
Mhm.
So archaeology, have you studied archaeology?
No, I get asked this question a lot. I'm not an archaeologist. I really, really wish that I was, because I just think it's so fascinating. I love just learning about, ancient civilizations. I love like seeing the way that people used to live, the types of artwork that they had, the types of technology that they used. I just think it's really fascinating. I have been on an archaeological dig. There are groups where you can volunteer to help out on digs. And so I did do that many years ago in Belize, where we were excavating a Mayan site. It was so cool. I just had the best time. We mostly found pottery and, things like that, but we did find some human remains. And so we found a skull that had like the jade inlays in the teeth. It was fascinating. And that was like a really big find, because we were up until that point, we were mostly finding broken pieces of pottery, which is still really cool. But to find something like that was just like, wow, this is really cool. I wish I had done more of those volunteer digs, but I'm glad I still did the one. So no, I'm not an archaeologist. I did do a lot of research for the book. There's not, a ton of archaeology in the book. I do talk about the Aztecs and this fictional character, Corey's believed ancestor, Chimali. But that is completely made up. That's not a real person, but some of the background about the Aztecs is true, such as the invasion of the Spaniards and whatnot.
First of all, I had no idea you could volunteer to go on an archaeological dig. But
Yes, it was so cool.
yeah, like I mean, it's like I want to ask you a little bit more about sort of how you came up with the idea for Corey's ancestor, but I also want to like, how does that work?
I don't even, this was in my younger years. I don't even know how I found out about this, but somehow I found out about this website where it just had archaeological digs all over the world. And it would have put like what the requirements were, when it was. Some of them you had to have certain experience. Some of them you didn't have to have any experience at all. I didn't have any experience. You also could like a lot of them were through universities. So the one that I did was through a university, and there were people who were on the dig who were there for credits. And then there were people who were purely volunteers. So at one point, they even had like halfway through it, they had a test. And I sat in on the test because I thought it was, because I'm a nerd and I thought it was really interesting. So I took the test even though I didn't have to, and I got 100%. So I'm really proud of that. But yeah, it was purely voluntary. And, I had to pay my way to get there, and I had to, pay for my room and board, but they provided everything. We stayed in this kind of this, I don't know if I'd call it a hotel, but kind of like a hotel type place. We all stayed in these little like hut cabin things that were really cool. And we'd get up in the morning, they'd have this amazing breakfast for us. We'd load up in the vans, we'd drive out to the site, we'd spend all day in the dirt, we'd come back, they'd have dinner for us, and then we had the evenings to do whatever we wanted. And it was just so cool.
Wow. Okay, so next question. Corey's ancestor. So you said that you put, there is some obviously some truth about the Mayans. Where did she come from? Was she based on a figure that you learned about?
The ancestor that she's looking for?
Yes.
No, totally made up. I don't even know, I can't even recall like where I came up with this idea for this character of Chimali, but I was kind of thinking about this Raiders of the Lost Heart is a love story. And so I thought it would be kind of interesting if there's an underlying love story to the expedition. So I'm not giving anything away, but the story, her ancestor is this Aztec warrior who fell in love with a commoner. And in the Aztec society, they had almost like a caste system. And so he would have been in a more noble class than a commoner. And so those types of relationships were frowned upon. And so I thought, well, that'd be really cool if, he fell in love with someone and that's how he got out of the Aztec Empire. And, that love is what then, turned into this, his ancestry. And so it really was just, I thought it would be nice for a romance if the underlying thing that they were looking for also was rooted in romance.
I love it. It really just adds some depth to everything, in just sort of a way that made the story extra fun.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So are we going to see anything else with these characters? Are you writing another romance or adventure or anything thereafter?
So I do have another book that will be coming out next year, I believe in December of 2024. I'm currently in the editing process on that one. I can't say too much about it, but it is in the same world. Corrie and Ford may or may not make an appearance. But there are some new characters, and that's all I'm allowed to say for now. But keep your eyes out because there's similar themes in the next book.
Fabulous. Thank you so, so much, Jo. This was super, super fun. Check out Raiders of the Lost Heart. Again, it's just a super fun book. The cover art is beautiful. I know that we're not supposed to judge books by their covers, but come on, why would they make them so nice otherwise?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's just a fun treat for everybody. And we are going to close this chapter of Turn the Page.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.